personal finances. Personal finances, they are those who have had legacies that they have gotten from parents, grandparents. They handed down a car, that's asset. They handed down $10,000. Oh, that's good. But there are persons who have never got anything from anybody. When you check right across, they are persons who came into this country from other countries from around the world, and you started from scratch. And starting from scratch, you never had anything to start with. And thanks be to God, God has blessed you with health and strength so you can work the hours and save some money. Now, in terms of how the funds will go, how will it be spent, what you're going to hold back on, it's going to be very, very important. So this presentation, now we're going to go into special planning. So we're just going to have a short word of prayer, and Pastor Ray is ready to go. All right, let's just pray and ask the Lord to guide us. Father, we thank you for what you have done in the past hour with us through your servant. We're about to go into another session, and we pray you will open our thoughts well so that we can able to understand. Thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. It's over to you, Pastor.
All right, thank you. This session is a very practical session on how to handle money, basically. I recommend the next hour or whatever it takes is especially for young adults, young families, middle-aged families, and the rest of us that maybe are well along our way and realize later we got to have some help. So if you know of anybody that's on the premises that's a young adult, just newly married, a few years married, or into middle age with kids and needs some help, this is exactly what this session is planned for. We've pulled the best from different people like Dave Ramsey and John Maxwell and other financial advisors and financial teachers, and from Ellen White's principles. What we're going to share right now are basic, I'm going to be going quick, but basic principles to help you live successfully as a Christian with your finances and not make the mistakes that many people make. Okay, these are things that Jeannie and I wished we had known earlier, but we did have a retired pastor go through several of these things with us, and that was 44 years ago, and boy, has it saved our bacon. Some of these basic principles we were taught by him, and it has stood us in real good test of time all the way through. So I have a workbook. You're going to want to fill in the blank as we go. I have a workbook. I have at least enough for one for every family. I don't know if I have one for everybody, but one for every family. And so, Pastor, let's see how far they go. And we're probably going to have to share. We probably don't have one for every person. Maybe we will. Depends on if you go out in the highways and byways and compel them to come in. But I'm not trying to force people in. I just know the value of this. Stephen Reese and I developed this, and we have both coached and counseled so many families through this, and they have said such a blessing it is. So, oh good, Elijah, I thought I had dropped something. Okay, good. Elijah, I'm not sure why, but I don't seem to be advancing. Is it me? There we go. All right. Good. So, we're going to talk about life, saving, and giving, and following God's plan this afternoon. Did you know that money is mentioned over 800 times in the Scriptures? Over 800 times in the Bible, money is mentioned. Thank you, Pastor. Appreciate that very much. And nowhere in the Bible is debt mentioned in a positive way. Okay? Nowhere in the Bible is debt mentioned in a positive way. So those are the first two blanks you can fill in your book. I'm just letting you know that anything you see underlined up there is probably a fill in the blank in your book. So if you want notes, they're right here in your book. And a lot of people like working off of this later. We're going to have you do a little bit of work right here in class. It's often said that we live in the most prosperous nation, yet we're the most burdened by debt of all of the people in the world. And we want what our grandparents had, only we want it 30 years earlier than they got it. By the time they were 60, they had kind of decent basic stuff. We want it when we're 30. That's why we have debt, because we're trying to get it earlier. They paid cash for it, and we don't have that cash at age 30 that they finally had when they were 60. It's also said that 51% of households have less than $10,000 saved for retirement. Do you believe that? A lot of people believe that Social Security is all I need to retire on. Thank goodness there will be Social Security when we retire. No, it will not be enough to live on in retirement. So you need to, thank you, Pastor, you need to be saving on something, and only 51% have only $10,000 saved up for retirement. Here's one that I really want to stop on from it. 78% live paycheck to paycheck. That's 255 million Americans. Now, if you think that number is off, and that was as of 2017, if you think that number is off, remember what happened in 2020. Okay? This came right to the surface. You could see this in the COVID pandemic. When this country shut down in 2020, why do you think the government rushed to give everybody stimulus checks? People couldn't go without their paycheck. They couldn't go a month. They could not go a month without getting a paycheck. Okay? 78% were living paycheck to paycheck. Okay? 44% of couples ages 45 to 54 with marital stress rated finances as the #1 issue. Usually, over and over in your family life materials and research, it turns out that finances is one of the biggest causes of divorce. Okay? I know there may be a couple more books that are needed out here, so I'm going to put these back out. Oh, thanks, Pastor. So this topic is pretty important that we're going to be going on today. Now, there's some career myths out there, and the career myths are, what career has the most number of millionaires included in that career? If you took people in a certain career segment, what's the career segment that has the most number of millionaires in that career segment? Anybody want to guess? Pardon? IT, sports, medical. All right, doctors? Nope, not doctors. Okay. Lawyers? Nope, not lawyers. The top 3 professions with the most number of millionaires. The most number of millionaires are found in these top 3 professions. Engineers. Not that they're paid huge amounts of money. They may have a decent income, but engineers. Accountants. Well, yeah, they know how to count money and track money. They know how not to spend money. Okay? Here's one that'll surprise you. The third one, the most number of millionaires by profession. Anybody want to guess? Yes! I'll back the truck up. You fill it. You're close, though. Look at this. Yes, teachers. Okay? Now let's explain. These 3 professions are filled with people that are usually pretty cautious about stuff. Frugal, and they're very careful. Teachers don't make a lot of money, but teachers put it back. A lot of teachers put it back. And by the time they have retired, that's what we're talking about. By the time they have retired, they have more than $1 million back in retirement funds. Okay? More people can be millionaires than realize they can be millionaires. Many people in this room can be millionaires. Just don't realize it. Okay? Dave Ramsey says this, live like no one else so later you can live and Give like no one else. And what we're going to talk about is a way of life and how to handle money. That's really what we're going to talk about here. It's based on Christian principles and values. Now, there's certain emotional attitudes people have toward money, and we need to recognize that. This helps when people go to handle money, and we sometimes do some teaching on, when I teach the Dave Ramsey classes, we teach about what kind of emotional attitude you have and why it makes you tend to do what you do with money. There's a desire for power. People think, well, money gives me power, so this is my emotional attitude. I want to have power. I need to have money so I can have more power. And then next, there's the feelings of happiness. Well, having lots of things makes me happy. And there is a little bit of euphoria when you first buy something until the credit card bill comes in. Okay, and then reality sets in. There's the sentiment of contentment. I feel like I'm okay if I have lots of money or I have more money or whatever. There's a sense of security. Okay, I'm not going to get thrown out on the street. I think I'm going to survive. I think I'm going to make it. That's an emotional attitude toward money. And then there's the satisfaction. It's a gift from God. These are emotions that people have. So in your book, it suggests here, take 2 minutes right now and write down your initial thoughts about how your personal faith lines up with how you deal with your finances. How your personal faith lines up with how you deal with your finances. I'm not going to ask you to share this, not going to ask you to turn to anybody else, but this is a really good reflection time. You write down how your personal faith lines up with how you deal with your finances. Not how it should, how does it? Here's how I deal with my finances. So what does it say about my faith? Is my faith in line with how I actually handle finances? Not aspirational, not how it should be, but how is it? Part of what we do is define present reality. Okay? Got 60 more seconds. Where does my personal faith line up with how I'm actually handling my money right now? What does the way I'm handling my money right now demonstrate about my personal spiritual faith? Thirty seconds. Okay, 5 seconds. All right, this is for you. This is for you, not to share with anybody else, not to share with me, but this is for you to think about. And it will be helpful as we go through the rest of our little book here, as we say, well, this is probably where I've been coming from all along. We're going to talk about how to manage your money so it doesn't manage you. But first of all, we're going to show the biblical philosophy toward finances in general, okay? The biblical philosophy is, first of all, as we said this morning, God owns it all. It's all His. It may be in my hand, but it doesn't belong to me. It belongs to God. God owns it all. Secondly, God provides for our needs. Have you ever noticed God doesn't always provide for my wants? Sometimes He does, but He provides for my needs. What I really need. That's why it says in the Scriptures, but godliness with contentment is great gain. Yeah.
There's another line. What would be after that? Always or something?
She said there's another line. What would be after that?
It says God provides for all our needs and time.
Yep. We just snuck that in there. Thanks for pointing it out. When we get to the second printing, we'll change that. All right. Next, we are stewards managing what is already His. So this is the biblical philosophy toward wealth, toward income, toward money, toward asset, toward just stuff. Another biblical philosophy is we are to care for our family's welfare. So we're not just supposed to be Scrooges, you know, and make everybody live on oatmeal and water 3 times a day. And the 5th one, we're to be givers just as God is the great giver. Okay, we're to be givers just as God is the great giver. And that's another sermon message sometime, but I go through that God is a great giver and Satan has always been the great taker. And all the things that God has given, Satan's tried to take back from us. And so God's trying to develop within us the attitude and the philosophy that He has because He's a giver. He's always giving. You go from the beginning of Scripture to the end, you look, God is always giving. You get right in the beginning of the New Testament, for God so loved the world, He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in Him shall not perish. You get all the way to the end of Revelation, and the city is given unto the saints. Okay? All the way from the beginning to the end, God is the great giver. Satan is the great taker. All right, so let's look how we can manage our money so it doesn't manage us. Practical points here. Did you know that 8 out of 10 tithers have 0 credit card debt? That's according to Chris Hogan in 2018. 8 out of 10 tithers. I'm not sure if that's entirely true, but it ought to be. It might be that they pay it off monthly. Okay? Now, if you're in a Dave Ramsey class, you're not going to have credit card debt because you're not going to have a credit card, according to him. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, going on. 28% are debt-free, including the house. Now, Jeannie and I are not quite there yet, but I have the card on the bathroom window, bathroom mirror with little boxes, and I've been Xing off the boxes month by month. And so we've got a countdown, and we're closing in. We are closing in. Okay? 91% of millionaires are active givers. Okay? 91% of millionaires are active givers. I believe it. It's true. Okay? You sometimes think millionaires are the greedy people. Most of the millionaires are the millionaire next door that you don't know, that lives a quiet life and has just been careful with their money. And they're the kind of people that give back to their community and give back to their fellow man and give back to the Lord. And then some of the big people that you know are givers. Yeah, they have flashy lifestyles and they may flash a lot of gold and bling and a bunch of other stuff, but they do some giving too. Yes, ma'am. Yes, thank you. I've been instructed to have you wait till the microphone because people are online. I keep forgetting.
Oh, okay. Do you think the millionaires who give, though, do you think they're giving out of altruism or just because they're getting tax breaks?
We don't know. We don't know why they're giving, whether it's altruism or tax breaks. The interesting thing is, when a millionaire or anybody else like me who's not a millionaire, wife and I, we give to things. When we give, whether or not we get a tax break, we are benefiting society. Okay? And that's why the government gives a tax break after the fact, is because it's saying there's enough benefit to society, we're going to recognize that because we raise taxes and take more money from people to make up for what isn't being given, but now it's being given. Then you have people like Warren Buffett and I'm trying to remember if it was Gates or somebody else. Warren Buffett has started this, it's the million, pardon? Right, he's a billionaire, but I'm trying to remember that, I'm sorry, I'm the same age as you, I can't remember the title of this thing, but it's basically gotten the Millionaire or Billionaire's Pledge, and he's gotten several people who are very, very stratosphere successful. They've all made a pledge. They're going to give it all away, either before they die or at death. They're giving it all away. He's already talked to his kids, and certain of his kids. This is Warren Buffett. You're getting $1 million when I die, and that's it.
Wow. Bill Gates.
Right. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is doing tremendous things around the world. I've been on a mission trip in India, and I've seen some of the stuff that they're doing in India. You never hear about, but I've seen it. You know, so there are those who are high flyers, And they're still givers. They just, you hear in the news about all their high-flying stuff. You don't necessarily hear what they give. Okay? The important thing, really, to me, the important thing, Chris Hogan points out about successful people. He's trying to point out certain traits that successful people follow. So by the way, even if you're not a millionaire, this is worth you following too. That's really the point behind Chris trying to say this, what he goes here. But the important thing is whether you have much or little, how are you handling it? And that's where we're coming from this afternoon. So, how are we going to be successful financially? Remember, Rome wasn't built in a day. We don't get there overnight, okay? It wasn't built in a day, but they were laying bricks every hour. And that's the important thing is start where you are and steadily keep going, okay? Keep going at it. How to manage money? Stay with it. Proverbs 13:11 says, dishonest money dwindles away, but whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. And there's something about handling money and handling it even in small amounts, but continually handling it well and managing it well, even if it's a small amount. Sometimes people say, well, I can't see myself ever getting a lot of money, so why should I worry about good financial habits? Little by little, you can make it grow. And we're going to be putting some principles and showing some examples of that here in just a little bit, very shortly. So, we're going to give you a Seventh-day Adventist inspired roadmap, and here's going to be another time when you're going to write a few things down for the next few minutes. You can't just lay around expecting things to happen. You have to have a game plan. You have to have a roadmap. And so we're going to just kind of do the start of it today. You want to create a focused game plan, and here we go. This is one of the things to think about right now while you're sitting here. You don't want to start with what you're going to do. Start with why you're going to do it. Why do I want to manage my money? Why do I want to do well with money? Not what am I going to do with it, why? What's the reason I want to manage it well? What's the reason I want to see money grow? What's the reason I want to take care of things at my home? Write that down. Start with the why. That's right there in the middle of the page. So if you're going to be developing your Christ-centered financial goals, why? Why are you doing this? Okay? And I'm not going to tell you what they should be. You need to decide what they should be. My why probably will be different than your why. It might be similar. Do you have your why down? Have you thought about it? Why do you want to manage money well? Why do you want to be a good money manager?
Just remember to take.
Okay, have you got something down yet? Still thinking about it? Got anything down? I see. We're going to start with the why. Why do I want to manage my money well? Why do I want to have a financial game plan? Not what is it, but why do I want to have it? Start with the why. Okay, after you do the why, that's when you start listing your goals. What do you want to accomplish? Okay? So the why might be, I want to get out of debt. The why might be, I want to save for my kids' college. Or the why might be, I want to save for retirement. Or the why might be, I want to be a good steward of all that God has blessed me with and make wise decisions. The why might be, I want to start a business someday. Okay? Those are different things. I'm not telling you those are your whys. I'm just saying. But if you have a why, then you start saying, okay, what do I need to do to reach that? What are my goals that I need to do? Okay? So what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? Now that you know your why. I want peace of mind. I don't want to have to worry about debts at night. Okay, I'm back to the why. You know, I want to be able to sleep nights. Then we're going to put down what are your goals now? What do you need to accomplish? I remember when Jeannie and I moved to Pennsylvania, let's see, 5.5 plus 21, 26, 27 years ago. We'd only owned one house plus the bank before, and now we were going to build a house. And we were renting. And I remember being up nights while Jeannie was asleep, sitting in bed with the notepad and the pen and the calculator, down to the nickel, trying to figure where the money was going to come from. Because it was going out twice. We were paying rent plus paying on a building loan. Never had money go out twice. So I wanted to manage money because I wanted to sleep nights. You know, so what are your goals? What kinds of things now are your goals? Okay, what is it you need to accomplish? What do you need to accomplish? And after that, you can write a clearly written plan how you're going to accomplish that. And we're not going to do that here, but I wanted you to do the why and start on the what, because that'll give you a jump start now on knowing how to move to the how am I going to accomplish that. And some of what we're going to talk about in the next few pages goes into that how. Okay, so you'll work on the how later. Put your why down now, and then put your what. What are the goals I need to accomplish? And then we're going to have you do the how on your own a little bit later. Okay, let's go to the next page of your little book. This was on this page here. Okay, budget. All right, now we need to make a budget. Did you know a budget is biblical? Some people think a budget is a nasty word. It's a 4-letter word that has more than 4 letters. Some people don't like the word budget. I'm going to tell you a budget is a very nice word. It's a liberating word. Okay, a budget is on your side. But a budget is biblical. Proverbs 21:5 says, "The plans of the diligent lead surely to plenty, but those of everyone who is hasty surely to poverty." A budget is a plan. Okay? Are you a budget hater? Dave Ramsey talks about being a budget hater, and he says, you will either learn to manage money or the lack of it will always manage you. And that's really true. John Maxwell says a budget is simply telling your money where to go instead of you wondering where it went. There's a lot of truth to that. Really a lot of truth. A budget is where you're in control and you're telling your money where it's going to go instead of you're going to the end of the month going, I don't have any money, I don't have any money, I don't have money, and I can't go and I can't go and I can't go. Okay? So it puts you in the driver's seat. Having a budget puts you in the driver's seat. I remember Jeannie and I had only been married about 2 weeks, and we'd been married 1 week on a honeymoon, and then we showed up to camp meeting. And we were at Camp Pitch in Kentucky, Tennessee in the good old days, which means we were pitching tents every day and moving platforms and floors and pianos and bed springs and mattresses and all that kind of stuff. And then we did camp meeting for 10 days. While we were doing all that, a couple of the other young interns said, hey, Ray and Jeannie, you need to go talk to Pastor Mel Hillier. He was a retired pastor, still had one church, but he was a retired pastor. He said, you need to talk to Mel Hillier. He has really helped us. We got in trouble financially. We got in a hole. We were owing back taxes, and we didn't know what to do and how to handle money. And Elder Mel Hillier's got a plan. And you need to go learn that plan. I mean, that's about all they told us. Well, it sounded good to me. Both of us had parents that were careful with money. I just knew we didn't have much. And Mom was real careful with what we had. She had a metal box in the closet of the bathroom, and she had envelopes in it, and she'd put some money in it every 2 weeks when Dad got paid, and that was about all I knew. I'm not sure, Jeannie, how much more you knew, but your parents were pretty modest and didn't have a lot either. We just knew our parents were careful with money, but we didn't have a plan. We went to see Pastor Mel Hillier, and he sat us down and he showed us how to do a budget. And not only that, he showed us how to run a 4-column ledger book for, who's the accountant here? Anybody need an accountant here? Okay, I forget whether, yeah, I see a hand back there. Are you the accountant? Oh, I thought you were volunteering to be the accountant. 4-column ledger and general journal. I forget which one is journals and a ledger, or ledgers and a journal. But anyway, one of them looks like your checkbook, and the other one has all your accounts, and you keep writing the figures. You have a running total in all of them. And we start, third week of marriage, we were running a budget out of those books, and we've been doing it for 44 years. Now, along the way, I learned about something called Quicken. And Quicken basically functions the same way those ledger books did. I don't go to any other accounting software because Quicken looks so much like what I was doing that I don't want to see somebody, I don't want to learn a new method. I want to keep using the method we're using, okay? But the budget has saved our bacon, and we're Adventist. It still saves our bacon, or Bacobits, or Stripples, or whatever you want to call it, okay? We're not wealthy, we're not independently wealthy, but we are ahead of most Americans simply because we've been following a budget and a plan and a tool that helps us get there. And that's why John Maxwell says a budget is telling your money where to go. That's what our budget does. It tells us every month where the money's going, instead of us wondering where it went. So, our book says, are you a budget hater? A budget creates freedom. That's why you do a budget. It really creates freedom in more ways than not. Budgets help you create and measure your goals. That's why we talked about in the page before, the why and then the what. What are your goals? Okay? Budgets can reduce stress. Hallelujah, that is so true. A budget reduces stress. Okay? And you exceed 85% of all Americans when you use and follow a budget. Wouldn't you like to feel like you're in the top 15% of the country? No? Yeah? Maybe? I do. That's a real compliment. You're ahead of 85% of everybody that you're living around when you follow and use a budget. And you're going to be financially ahead and financially more solvent, too. Right at the top, commit 10% of giving back to God. And like I said this morning, the tithe is God's. That's 10%. It's already God's. And a generous offering is out of my funds after God's tithe has been turned in. When we are giving to Him, oh, I lost a slide in there somewhere. Okay. When we give to Him, we're blessed. When we don't, we're cursed. Malachi 3:10-11. And I got to realizing this. Do you know that God promises a blessing when we return a tithe? Do you think, this is just for thought, not being super theological here, but a little bit. Do you think that when we don't return a tithe, God sits in heaven and says, wow, I see it raised, not returning a tithe. Bzzat, curse him! But God says you're cursed. I bring a curse onto myself. God doesn't have to do it. Okay? I'm doing it to myself. And I'm going right into Satan's life and Satan's territory. I'm bringing a curse onto myself. God's not up there kazapping me, kazow, kazam. You know, it's going to happen. It's a natural law of cause and effect. Okay? So, let's recognize these three thoughts here on the next page. When it comes to spending, sometimes we have to remember that we have this attitude that I have to have. And there are things I have to have. I'm not talking about the emotional I have to have. I'm talking about I have this habit I have to support. I like to eat. I have to have food. And we're going to talk about the things your financial house has to have. So let's remember, there are things, three things here. We think there are things we have to have, but then there are things that are nice to have, but they're not absolutely necessary. Let me put it to you this way. I have to have food. I should have clothing, if you want me to walk around in polite society. I should have shelter. These are kind of the have-to-have things.
Black tie.
Pardon?
Black tie.
Yeah. Well, but if I stand over here, what do I feel? Ooh, that sure is nice. I grew up in Florida. And when I was a kid in Florida, guess what our church did not have? Air conditioning. We had windows, but we didn't have air conditioning. We had little black fans on the pillars that oscillated, and boy, you waited till it went past you and then it was gone. And then it came back for just a second, it was gone the other way. It's nice to have air conditioning, but I don't have to have air conditioning. I feel like I've conditioned myself to it, but I don't have to have it. Okay? And then there are things I want, but it works against my goals. And that's where most Americans get trapped. They get trapped in the things they want, and they feel like they've moved their wants to the have-tos. They jumped over the nice-tos to the have-tos. Things I want, but it works against my goals. These are three thoughts to help us recognize how we handle money and how we think about money. As I mentioned, there are essential needs, areas of needs for your family. And if you were to put your financial house up, Dave Ramsey will tell you, it takes 4 walls and a roof. There's 5 things that are essential, 4 walls and a roof of your financial house. Okay, first of all is food. So you and your family need food. Those are things that just have to be there. Okay? Second is shelter. Pretty much it's a given. We're going to need shelter of some kind. Okay? We live in Georgia. It's going to rain. It's going to blow. In the winter it gets a little cool. In the summer it gets hot. And we need shelter from evil men and evil angels. Okay? Then there's basic clothing. Okay, so we've got to have basic clothing. I may not have a bow tie, but I need to have something that I'm wearing. So that's essential. Utilities, electricity, water, sewer, maybe gas, depending. What was that? Air conditioning. Somewhere between nice to have and have to have.
They have kids from school and stuff. Like everything is on the internet now for kids to do their school, whatever. Like
Well, when we get to the budget, we'll look at that. There was a time we didn't have Wi-Fi at our house.
I'm saying, but things wasn't online like that.
Our son entered a trade school. He entered a trade school to become an IT administrator. Okay, trade school, we paid good tuition. They gave him a computer, but then he had assignments he had to do, and guess what? They wanted him on high-speed, well, didn't even have Wi-Fi yet. They wanted him high-speed internet, and we had dial-up. Dial-up didn't work for his class at all. And where we lived, they weren't going to put high-speed internet in until they had 50 families agree that they would pay to have it. We're out in the country, okay? And so we ended up having to go down to Comcast and get, I think that's what we did, Gene, I forget who. Finally, they put it in, okay? And so we kind of thought for his class we had to have it. But we didn't even think we had to have it for us. So let's just remember, it's somewhere between have to and it's nice to. There's always the public library. Stay after school. There's all kinds of ways you can do this. Go to McDonald's. You can sit at McDonald's. They have Wi-Fi. I've done that a lot of times. I've even in south of Atlanta, I've pulled into Comfort Inn and just sat in their lobby because I needed Wi-Fi while I was on the road working with people. Yeah, well, I've got my guest privileges account number.
Cybersecurity, not good.
It's probably not, but I've used it.
Can you please raise your hand so everybody can hear me so we can get the mic?
Okay, she said it's not secure. He said son needs Wi-Fi. I've said the public library and school. But anyway, everybody decides for themselves. But here's the 5 essential areas you need for your family, and transportation in most cases. Most cases you need something to get to work. You need a way to get back and forth to work. If you're in Europe, you could do transportation without having to own a car. We were in Holland this summer. We got run over multiple times with bicycles. I mean, there's got to be 500,000 people in Amsterdam that ride a bicycle every day, back and forth. You can't get across, you can't cross the street, but that's transportation. Okay, so these are the 5 essential areas of need, as Dave Ramsey would say, the 4 walls and the roof of your financial house. Now, there are 3 T's that can destroy a family budget. What do you think the 3 T's are? Toys. Absolutely right. Toys. One man's toy is another man's treasure. And both men's debt. I mean, what would you call a toy? I'm sorry. What would you say somebody else's toy is? Could be a car. A all-terrain vehicle. Yep. What else? What other kind of toy? Video game set, PlayStation, whatever.
Anything that is not a must, but just used for enjoyment.
Anything that's not a must, but it's used for enjoyment. Can be a toy. Okay? A boat, yeah. A boat, motorboat, speedboat. Yeah? Okay. So, toys can destroy a budget. Treats. All right. Anybody here like treats besides me? What would somebody think of as a treat? Going out to eat. Ice cream. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Time payments. Time payments destroy a family budget. Anything you're buying on time. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Okay, time payments. These are the 3 T's that can really destroy a budget. Now, what are 7 things that we can probably live without? Now, there may be some debate on this, but Dave Ramsey's pretty good about pointing these things out and making us really think. So let's look at the 7 things. Cable or satellite TV? Thank you. Okay? It's not a necessity. You could probably live without. You can save a lot of money. We actually stopped using cable TV and we went to Roku and streaming. Okay? We learned there was a lot of programs we could live without because we already were living without them. We were just paying for them. Okay? Sports clubs are high-end gym memberships. You know, Dave Ramsey says high-end. Okay? I'm not going after Planet Fitness here. $10 a month. Okay? Expensive vacation or trips. Do you know what it costs now to take a family of 4 to Walt Disney World? I was reading about it in the Wall Street Journal the other day. I could not believe. Thousands. And it's not even real. I grew up in Florida. I was in Academy, and we got to go in the soft launch for Walt Disney World. Before they opened to the public, they had us and some others able to come in and kind of do the park thing before it was really officially open. And I've been there a couple of times over the last 50 years or whatever that it's been open. I'm not bugging anybody here. I'm not faulting you at all. I have no desire to go to Walt Disney World. Okay, now, I'll do some other things that cost money. They're more real. But that's just me, okay? But expensive vacations and trips, and people think we've got to do them and got to do them all the time. Eating out frequently. Who said that earlier? Somebody said that earlier. My wife says that a good meal is any meal she doesn't have to cook or clean up after. I get it. I really do. I get it. You know how much it costs to eat out? Little old Calhoun. I don't know about here, this part of little old Calhoun. When you get off the interstate and you go toward the Calhoun Church, you got to run the gauntlet for about a mile. All the businesses have lined up from the very beginning of IHOP and the motel to Walmart and everything in between. They're all lined up there. You can't get down the road, get past Bojangles because they're all backed out into the right-hand lane and you're about to rear end 7 cars that are still out there. Okay? But if you stop and count up, how much am I spending at fast food places and buying stuff on the road versus eating at home? Now, it's getting expensive to eat anywhere, home or there, and it's not going to get any better. But eating out really adds up. And I want to tell you another reason why you're so glad to be a Seventh-day Adventist. You've got reasons to be glad to be a Seventh-day Adventist, don't you? We sure do. Let me tell you another reason why, well, that too, but let me tell you another reason why. You don't drink alcohol. When you eat out and buy alcohol, you are through the roof on expenses. Oh, yeah, there's a whole list we can go down. I'm just saying, when you eat out at a restaurant, they've got a good profit margin on that alcohol, and people spend a lot of money on that alcohol when they're eating out, especially some of the business meals that people do. So eating out frequently, you can probably live without. Gadgets, the new iPhone model 3000X whatever, okay? So every time there's a new gadget, do you know there's people that rush to be the first one to own this? I own a Samsung, what do we say it was, Gene, A13? It's been around for a while. And we just had to replace our phones because they died. We didn't get the latest, newest model. We got one that's kind of been there for a while. Before that, it was a Galaxy S8 or something. It wasn't the latest model of that either. Yes?
I want to go back briefly to number 3. I noticed you said expensive vacation and trips, right?
Right.
I'm glad you said that because you can plan a nice low budget vacation trip, right? Because I think something that Jamaicans, or I don't know about Caribbean people, I'm a Jamaican, something that we never really did that I admire Americans for doing, especially white Americans, and that is take a vacation every year.
Yes.
And that's not just, look, it's about quality of life, and
It is.
it's about your health. You have to take time to take a break. So what are some low budget, all right, I think, number one, I think a good way to travel and enjoy a nice vacation is mission trips. A lot of people don't realize that.
Yes.
You know, mission trips are a good way to travel, see the world.
Yes.
And, well, yes,
And
it's expensive, but it covers everything. Your ground transportation, it covers your room and board it covers a lot of things. So that's just a thought.
I'm going to use the word here, expensive vacation trips, with a bit of a qualifier, okay? First of all, everybody's going to, on their own, decide what they think is expensive or not. I'm going to recognize that. I'm not going to say you can't this, that, or the other. I picked on Walt Disney World because they have raised their prices consistently well above inflation and are, I think, scalping people anymore when they go. Okay, so I could pick on them. Vacation is healthy. Just getting away in some way or another is healthy. My wife and I have done a lot of camping, okay? We actually went on a dream trip this summer that we planned to do after we retired, okay? But we found during the pandemic, Viking Cruise suddenly had a huge sale on. We can't match that price later. And we were going to take her sister that has MS. That was our only reason for going. And her sister backed out. And I said to Jeannie, I said, well, we don't need to go. We're going to do it after we retire. Well, let's just keep the money in the savings account. But I want to go. Melt my heart. Of course we're going. And you're absolutely right. It was healthy for us. Are we going to do it every year? No, we can't do it every year. And yes, we saved up for it. And yes, we paid cash. Okay? Okay, but we can't do that every year. But there are people who do that every year, and they put it on their card, and they go in debt for this every year. That's really kind of what I'm driving at. Okay, that's really where I'm driving at on that. Okay, let's go on. Having to get the latest, newest gadget, I can live without that. The hottest name brand, bling bling, whatever it is, now you've blown it. It's got to be this designer whatever. Hey, I have Nike shoes that I buy. Guess what? I buy them at the Nike outlet. And I buy them for less than I can get just some other brand shoes somewhere else. And they aren't the top of the line Nike either. I mean, there's a reason why they're at the outlet and marked down. Okay, but they work. Expensive hobbies. I don't know what that is. You'd have to decide what that is. But these are things you could probably live without as expensive hobbies. Okay? So let's look at a quick start budget worksheet. We have it printed in your book. I've put it up on the screen here. It's awful small, so it's probably better to see on your screen. But this is what I would recommend you start doing. You don't have to do it right here during the class, but I really recommend tonight or tomorrow you guys sit down together and start doing this budget. And here's how the budget always works. You put at the very top what your total net income is. What do you and your spouse take home every month? You do it on a month type budget. Okay, this is after taxes, after expenses, after withholdings, after whatever your employer, insurance, whatever they take out. Okay? Then we start with what we call the monthly expenses. And the first thing you put is God's tithe, and then you put your offerings right from the top. I have found, Jeannie and I have found, and countless other people have found, if you take God's tithe first and offerings after that, God will help you make the other things work. Amen. Okay? But if you start, now I've found this out, and I've seen so many people have found this out. If you start with the other things, you will never have God's tithe left at the end. Everybody will say, Pastor, I can't tithe. I've got too many, my expenses are too great. I can't afford to give. And I generally have found that if I start with God's tithe, I can afford to live. You catch the difference? The person says, I can't afford to give, but I found if I start with God's tithe, I can afford to live. And it's been shown over and over again that financially people do better when they tithe than when they don't tithe. That 90% goes farther than when people keep a whole 100% to themselves. And offerings on top of that. Okay? So you're going to want to put down savings, an emergency fund, or maybe you have another kind of savings, or you may want to have 3 to 6 months in your emergency fund. Housing. Rent, mortgage, do you have a second mortgage? Do you have real estate taxes, repairs, homeowners, renters insurance? Utilities, we have electricity, gas, water, trash, phone, internet, quote, optional, quote. Cable, satellite, oh yeah, definitely optional. The debt snowball minimum. I'm going to be talking about the debt snowball minimum in a minute, but this is a good place to put it right here. Okay, actually I moved it over up here. I moved it over, I think it's run off the bottom of the screen so we can't see it. Food, groceries, this is what helps. If you're going to eat out, budget for eating out, and then you'll know how many times you're going to eat out this month or this year. As the case may, that was a joke, you can kind of catch that as the case may be. Clothing, adults, children, transportation, car payment, maybe you have 2 car payments, gas and oil, repairs, auto insurance, personal life insurance, health insurance, child care, church school tuition. Fund money, woohoo! Everybody needs to have some fund money. Medical expenses, and if you have exercise memberships, they need to go here. This has to zero out. So you say, here's the income, here are the expenses, and you've got to at least zero out, if not come out money ahead. It can be done. It can be done. Okay? And this gives you freedom. This following a budget like this helps you actually thrive financially. You're going to get ahead when you follow it. Okay, now, going to look at the debt snowball a little bit. And like we say up here on this slide, don't forget to add debt to your budget. Have any of you heard of the debt snowball? Okay, good. Hey, Pastor, you've got a great bunch here. You've got an educated group. You told me this was an educated group. I believe it. Okay, the best way to pay off debt is to use the debt snowball. We're either from Jamaica or Florida or from Georgia, so we're not real acquainted with snowballs. But Pastor's lived in Rochester, New York, so he can tell us about snowballs. But you know the idea about a snowball is once you get it rolling downhill, it kind of gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay? That's the way we can do on paying off debt. So some of you have heard of the debt snowball, and it's very effective, and it's really good. But the debt snowball is basically saying this. One of my goals is to be out of debt. And Jeannie and I are down to the house. Okay? So, and we don't really get into consumer debt. We do, don't tell Dave Ramsey. We do use a credit card, but we pay it off monthly. We do not ever carry a charge. If we can't pay it, we don't buy it. Okay? We just use it like cash, like a debit card. Okay? That's the only way we use it. I recommend people use a debit card instead of a credit card because not everybody has the discipline, and I want people to stay out of debt. But here's how the debt snowball would work. The debt snowball works this way. You start off by listing the debts that you have that are time payments. In other words, every month you've got a debt you've got to pay. Not a bill, but a debt. So, for example, we put up here, let's say there was a past electric bill, it's past due for $50. There was a medical bill, there was $460 yet to pay. Home Depot put in that new deck in the back, and we still got a debt of $770 to pay to them. CitiCard and Visa, we went to Walt Disney World, we still got $3,300 to pay on that. And we have a car loan for $6,400. I don't know where you get a car for $6,400 these days, but no, you can. Okay. So the electric bill that's past due, the total payoff is $50, but your minimum payment that you've been paying is $10 a month. In addition to the regular electric bill, you've been paying $10 against that $50 bill. Okay? So here's how the debt snowball works. You take the minimum payments and you make all the minimum payments to all of those bills like you have been, but you try to pay off that electric bill right away. You have a yard sale or something and you get that $50 gone. Okay? Then you take the $10 a month that you were paying to the electric company and you add it to the $38 that you're paying to the medical bill, so now you're paying $48 a month. The $10 you used to pay on electric, you're not having to pay anymore, so you add that $10 to the minimum, and you keep paying the minimum payment on everything else, but now you're paying the medical bill of $48 instead of $38. When you get the medical bill paid off, because now you're going faster, you take the $48 and you add it to the $45 that you're paying to Home Depot, which means now you're paying Home Depot $93 a month. Everybody tracking with me so far? Okay. And when you get Home Depot paid off, you take the $93 and you add it to the $150 of the Walt Disney credit card bill. And instead of $150, you can pay $243 a month. And when you get the CitiCard Visa paid off, you add the $243 to the car loan of $310, and you're paying $353 a month. Thank you. Watch carefully. And at $553 a month, how long is it going to take you to pay off that car loan?
1 year. 10 months.
Yeah, and that's assuming you hadn't paid the minimum payment so long, which you had. Okay? But if you hadn't, $553 pays it off a whale of a lot faster than $310. And you'll find out within about 1 to 2 to 3 years, you're out of debt. Amazing, awesome, wonderful, praise God. And don't go back into debt. It feels so good to get out of debt. Hey, thank you. We're bringing the microphone up here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm fine with the debt snowball. However, would it work if you were to look at it and see which would give it a greater advantage? And from my perspective, you then pay the additional amounts first towards a debt with the highest cost in terms of interest rate. And so over the period of time, you'll pay off the debt faster if you pay the one with the highest interest rate with the extra money. You might not see the number of loans reducing as quickly, but in terms of your financial benefit, it accrues to you much more.
Dave Ramsey talks about that. That's a very good point. Dave Ramsey talks about that. There are some people that find that successful, and some financial planners recommend that. And so that's why Dave kind of talks about it and brings that up. Because some financial planners will say, take your payment that has the highest interest rate, or maybe even the highest payment, and start throwing money at that. So why do you think Dave Ramsey and some others talk about this approach And I'm fine whichever one you want to do. The main thing is accelerate your payments and get them gone. That's really the bottom line. Why might you think, they've got a hand back here, why might you think that some like Dave Ramsey recommend starting with your lowest one and going from there? We've got a hand here, and then we have a hand there. So they're going to bring the microphone around so that people online can hear you.
So with this, you actually see success earlier on, and you get motivated to keep going and going and going. So you can see a bigger impact and bills. So instead of paying 5 bills, after a couple months, you're paying only 2 bills and then 3 bills. So you're seeing yourself, you feel more. And some people need that extra push, that motivation to say, oh, I'm doing something, to actually, you know, keep going.
Right. Okay, good. Thank you. We had a hand here. I think she wanted to say amen on the microphone.
It was the same thing that he was
Right.
saying.
Okay. And there's a hand up here, and then there's one in the back. Okay.
I think the reason why that approach would probably be better, this one where you start with the smaller one first, is because I think people are typically intimidated. It's just human nature to be intimidated by a huge amount. And they might feel like, oh, I can't tackle this right now, and you know, it might intimidate them. But when you start small, you're basically it's like you're breaking it up into bite-sized pieces. It's more manageable. It's easier to attack it when you start with a small one. It's not as intimidating. So you start small, and then I think I would prefer that approach.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Basically what she says, but I'm looking at it at this point. The budget that you're working with is the same money that you're working with, you're using to take time, break it down without taking out of your pocket for attack the larger one while you still have that budget working with.
Right.
So you pay off one, and that $10 that you would have been paying, you use it over. So it's the same money recycling without putting extra on it to pay off.
Right, right. The number one reason that this is effective has not as much to do with the interest rate or the amount as it does with the psychology. And that's really, to be honest with you, the number one reason. Because people are more likely to stick with it, okay? They're more likely to stick with it. They're more likely to have a sense of accomplishment. If they start with the car loan at $310 and they add another $10 to it, everything is still sitting there as huge, and they don't feel like I'm not getting anywhere. So even though it's helping from the interest side of you, the motivation to stick with it and get out of it, but it does move money. The thing our brother mentioned earlier too, just now, was that really the assumption starting with the electric bill past due is if you work hard, you can find $50 and just knock that thing out. And Dave Ramsey, his thing is have a yard sale. He's going to tell you right off the bat, when you've got debt, first thing to do is have a yard sale, and you're going to get some money, and you can do something with it. So you can knock that off, and you can move the $10. I mean, if you only sell the lawnmower, you can move the $10 right away off of that electric bill. We got a hand over here if somebody's got the mic. Thank you, good sir. We've got the lady right up here.
Yeah, my question with the Debt Snowball, which I heard about before, but I heard about it in parallel with the debt avalanche method.
Okay.
And I was wondering if you recommend the avalanche method for anything, or you can compare the two and explain the difference.
I can't. I haven't heard about the avalanche unless you use a different term for it.
Okay.
But the main thing is come up with a plan that helps you stick with it and move out of debt. That is the bottom line. A plan that helps you move the debt faster and not just, okay, I'm going to do minimum payments the rest of my life. You know, we just can't afford to do that. There's people right now that have student loans that will never pay them off even though they're paying on them every month, because it just runs forever. When you make the minimum payment, it runs forever. If you get a credit card debt going, if If you get a credit card, let's look at this city loan for a minute. $3,300. And the minimum payment is $150. Do you know what the interest is on that city card? Probably, and it might even be higher if it's American Express. Okay? So I have to be real careful because I have an American Express card, but you know why I have it? Because it's Delta. And our grandson's in Massachusetts. But we pay it off monthly. I'm not at all going to get into that 26% interest. But I am going to get free points to fly Delta to see the grandson. Okay? And I'm going to, can I use an expression, pardon this expression, I'm going to let other suckers pay the interest so that American Express can give me points to fly to see my grandson. But I'm not about to pay the interest to American Express just to go fly to see my grandson. And take my lovely wife, too. In fact, she's the one telling me, here's the dates we're going, and we're going. Yes, ma'am. We got a hand here in the back. By the way, whatever plan you work, great. I'm all for it. This plan works. I'm just saying this works, and it's so much easier for people to follow.
Okay. When I had my student loans, what I did was to pay off those loans that have higher interest rates.
Yes.
So I paid them off one time.
Yes.
And then the smaller loans, I combine those.
Yes.
Or you get a smaller interest rate, and then I pay monthly.
Consolidate them.
Consolidate. And
That
I
works.
see that works marvelous. Finish pay quickly, that's it. And make sure you pay on time, a little more if you can, so that you don't accrue a lot of interest.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. In fact, we're probably paying 3 times the home loan amount right now because we're prepaying, getting that thing knocked down. So whatever plan you want to work that works for you, great. I just am saying this one because this helps so many people, and it just makes it psychologically easier to get it done. The main thing is, like Larry the Cable Guy, get her done. Okay? So we've got a little worksheet in here. If you've got debts, you can put it on. You don't have to tell me, you don't have to tell anybody else, but you can list it here, and you can figure how you're going to work your debt payment plan over here. So I recommend that you would use that. Just as a reminder, to get out of debt, Dave Ramsey recommends cut the card. You ever seen him with those big scissors? Cut the card. His recommendation is to cut the card and, well, I've moved on. Okay, let me back up. His recommendation is cut the card and pay cash or use a debit card, because a debit card is immediate cash coming out of your checking account, just as if you used cash. Okay? So for people that have a lot of debt or have been in debt for a long time, this makes a lot of sense. I really recommend it. Depending on your personality, you might be able to use a credit card and not damage yourself, but you just absolutely do not want to be making time payments with a credit card, and hopefully not anything else. Maybe a house, but not anything else. So with Jeannie and I, we have found we're able to use a credit card and not buy things that we cannot afford to pay cash for. In fact, when we first got married, now this is really squirrely. When we first got married, if I had cash in my pocket, I was more likely to spend it because I so hated credit card interest that I wouldn't use the card for something, but I would pay cash for something I didn't need. I don't know, that's just, that's a personality quirk. It's a kind of a blessing in a way, because now the only thing I carry is a little emergency cash in case I break down on the side of the road, you know. So anyway, all right, the dreaded credit card. Remember, Grandma didn't have one, okay? 40% of Americans live with credit card debt. I kind of think that figure may be a little low, but 40% is a pretty large amount with 330-some million people in America. Okay, the average amount held is up 52% from 10 years ago, and this is a 4-year-old statistic here. So, you know, 10 years ago, and now it's 7,697. That's the average amount. I had a church member in South Carolina that had like over $30,000 on credit cards, And praise God, he whittled away at them and got them banged out. He came to one of the finance classes our church held, and he made that his goal. And he still calls me every once in a while to tell me how he's doing, and they were able to buy a house and all the rest of that kind of stuff. Okay? So there's 1,027 trillion in total debt as of 2018. That just blows me away. So live without one. Use a debit card instead of a credit card if you're going to use a card, because that's coming right out. But Dave Ramsey will say, go ahead and cut the credit card. I say in the worst case scenario, freeze your credit card. Now, I don't mean go to the bank and freeze your account. I mean get a bowl of water. Yes, a bowl of water, and and make sure it's a metal bowl. It has to be metal. A metal bowl, stainless steel, aluminum, a bowl, and fill it with water and put your credit card in the bowl of water and put it in the freezer. Okay, now why do you do that? So you don't use it. And it slows you down in case you're tempted to use it. And you're not going to microwave it because it's in a metal bowl. So you can't get it quick. And I'm not telling the other things you could do. But worst case, if you're going to keep it, freeze it in a bowl of water. Okay, because generally, if you take a day or two, and my wife's really good about this. I come up with this good idea. We need to buy this. Let's go buy this. Well, let's think about it. Maybe tomorrow. By tomorrow? No, maybe we don't need that. Might change your mind, right? But I got her at Costco a week ago Sunday, so we got bicycles for when we go on vacation and go camping. Hint, hint, you asked about vacation. Somebody did. Okay, so buying wisdom from our grandparents. What did our grandparents know that we need to know today here in America? Well, buyer beware. Dave Ramsey will say this. People that are poor, one of the reasons they're poor is because when they go to buy something, they ask, how much down and how much per month? This is really true. Dave's onto something. Because the people who get ahead in life don't ask how much down and how much per month. People say, well, if it's only, $200 down and $150 a month, I can afford that. Over how long plus interest? Okay. People that get ahead in life, and he calls them rich people, they ask how much, period. And then they pay cash. Got a hand over here. They don't say how much down and how much per month. They say, how much is it? And if they've got the cash, they buy it. Now, I'll add a little something to that. There's another thing they say that's very true. Yes, ma'am.
Just a question. Would it be a good idea, say for instance, if you have like a few multiple credit cards with the high interest rate, to consolidate it to maybe a credit card with a 0% interest rate and just draw the balance over to that particular car and pay it off that way? Would that be?
That's an idea that a lot of people use. Okay, that is an idea a lot of people use. Okay. Another idea is just get one loan from somebody and pay them all off, and then cut them all up. Just a thought. Maybe even a second mortgage on the house. That's one of the cheapest loans you'll ever get. Not a bad thought. But getting rid of credit cards, even if there's some way you can consolidate them into one loan, is often better than having multiple ones out there. Yes. Yes, we had a hand over here. Yes, sir.
The society in which we live is vastly different from that in which our grandparents grew up.
This is true.
And I think it requires more time to help people to change their thinking styles. Mm-hmm. And we need to focus a lot more on that. Mm-hmm. I can do the John Maxwell or the Dave Ramsey and give you something that is really nice to hear, mm-hmm. but isn't necessarily the most efficient thing for you financially. And your reality should always color your perspective. Mm-hmm. I can ask how much and pay cash because I have it. If I don't and I need the same thing, I should then ask the question, okay, what's the basis on which I can acquire this? Mm-hmm. And I should now think to see whether or not this is something that I need now. And so we need to, I remember a friend of mine, and she had a heated argument, and she really told me off, because I was of the view that it's common sense. And she said, it's common sense to you because you know it. Mm-hmm. You should invest in getting people to understand what you call common sense. So when we look at the financial decisions to be made, we ought to coach people into understanding that you need to be responsible and what you need to prioritize. Mm-hmm. It's fancy and nice to say have no debt. It doesn't help all of us, especially black people. I don't usually use the race thing, but minorities don't have a basis to start with. So you don't have the option of paying cash for most things. So you now have to sit down and think it through. And we need to understand what we're being taught here is how to re-engineer how we think. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily to just grab it and run with it. Am I correct? Mm-hmm. Because your reality will not necessarily allow us to do that. So I'd like for us to keep thinking as the presentation is being made, and not just see it as something to grab and run with without thinking. Thank you.
Good. So the thing to remember is where you're at, what your goals, what you're trying to accomplish, but also, like our brother is saying, what are the principles and the directions I want to go, and the things that will bring value over the long run. Okay? The other thing is, if we're going to do race a little bit, when certain merchants see somebody coming, they're willing to say how much down and how much the payments are, but the down payment and the payments for you may be different than they are for somebody of another race. Cash is always king. Now, you may not be able to have the cash. I'm going to concede that, okay? So he's absolutely right. You need to say, is this really something I must have, something I need to have, or something I want to have? You've got to make that decision, okay, at some point. And you've got to start budgeting so you get in a position to where you can start working from a position of cash. One of the nice things about eventually working from a position of cash is not only do you say how much and pay cash, but you say something, and I said I'm going to enlarge that a little bit. You say to the same merchant, if I was to pay cash, what would your price be? There's a bunch of places, not every place, but there's a bunch of places where when you come back and say, if I was to pay cash right now, what would the price be? The price will be different than the asking price. Okay? So those are all things that factor into this. The other thing that factors into it is I'm not a good negotiator. I don't consider myself a bargainer or a haggler. You know, you could laugh me out of the Middle East. Those guys love to haggle over everything. And India, that's second nature, okay? But I have found 2 or 3 times when I went to Lowe's, when we lived in Pennsylvania, they had lawnmower and they had a rototiller and they had an out on the front, and they had it on discount because it had been refurbished. It had been returned and repaired and refurbished. And I went up to the person and I said, I see you've got such and such here. If I was to pay you cash for this, and I named a price, would you take it right now? Yeah. Okay. So then later, we were on an 1.6 acres, and we had a riding lawnmower, and it died. Okay. After so many years of getting beat up on that 1.6 acres and having 2 teenagers drive the mower, and mom and dad ran over a few things too, and whatever. So I went to Lowe's, and there was a riding lawnmower And it was the end of this, we were like in November or whatever in Pennsylvania. And they were offering this deal where if you bought it on a Lowe's credit card, you got a discount. I didn't want a Lowe's credit card. I've already got Visa or whatever. I don't need a Lowe's credit card. But I went to the guy in charge of the department and I said, hey, this is the end of the season. You know, nobody's buying lawnmowers. You're going to have to carry this on inventory over into spring. What would you sell it for me if I pay cash right now? There's at least 10% less by selling for cash right now. Okay? Then the guy said, and you know, I'll sell it to you for that price, but if you take this credit card and buy it on the Lowe's credit card, I'll give you the special that Lowe's is advertising on it. I'm sorry, I signed up for the Lowe's credit card. I paid cash for the mower. Chopped up the card after I got the mower. You know? So you'll have to determine where you are, as he said, on the continuum. But the philosophy that works for so many people for so long is try to find out where if you pay cash, what's it going to be? Can I afford it? First of all, can I afford to buy it for cash? Do I need it? Can I afford to buy it for cash? Oh, and by the way, if I pay cash, is there a discount?
Just wanted to add something in regards to consolidation to be aware of.
Yes.
As you two gentlemen just said, it depends on the situation and all these things that we're talking about financially. Yes. Same thing with consolidation.
Yes.
If you have 3 credit cards that are $5,000 each and you consolidate it, now you have a $15,000 loan. You may be better off leaving them unconsolidated, because if you get, let's say, a tax return or extra money, you can knock off $5,000 and then deal with them in pieces. But once you consolidate your loans, now you have one giant loan that you kind of have to pay off. So all of those things need to be taken into consideration. I had a friend that had maybe $50,000 in loans, and we consolidated it. Now he had to get rid of this one $50,000 loan instead of paying a 5 or 10 or 15 and something else.
There are any number, and I'm just going to say there are any number of things that you want to take into account. I want to talk about, and I've got to move on with the rest of this, but I just wanted to say here's a general philosophy to keep in mind, that your goal is to move out of debt, and move out of debt as fast as you can, okay? So let me go on here and try to get through our material before we get too late here, because I'm going to be back at 9 in the morning. And I'm going to see, where is he? Okay, I talked to him earlier. He's going to be the first one here. Will Smith says, too many people spend money they haven't earned to buy things they don't want, to impress people they don't like. There's a lot of truth to that. So here's biblical strategies for wise buying decisions. Number 1, wait or pray overnight before making a significant purchase. I'm not talking about going to the Dollar General store or getting groceries, or this is a significant purchase. Okay, carefully consider your buying motives. Why am I buying this? Is it because the guy next door bought one and now I feel like I need to have one? You know? Okay. And no amount of stuff equals true contentment or fulfillment. Let's just remember that. Okay? And never buy anything you do not understand. If you don't understand it, you can't explain it to yourself or your spouse or your child, don't buy it. You know, it's not going to work well. Consider the opportunity cost of your purchase. What's the opportunity cost? Does anybody know what that means? If I buy this now, what is it I can't do after buying this? In other words, what did it take the place of? What is it I can't do? What kind of position did it put me in if I buy this now? That's an opportunity cost. This opportunity has now cost me something. I may be missing out on an opportunity that I'm going to need later. Seek the counsel of your spouse. Be unified in your decision. And seek the counsel of an expert. You know, talk to a financial advisor. Talk to your tax accountant. Then there's the joy of family giving. Manage well, be empowered to give well. Again, the earth is the Lord's, the fullness thereof. You and I are asset managers for the Lord, so if we view it properly, we aren't giving our own money away, okay? What happens when we give? Giving makes us more Christ-like. okay? A spiritually mature Christian is one that gives. Giving motivates you and me to be less selfish, and less selfish people have more of a tendency to prosper in relationships and health. And I'm going to back this up with some secular research here in just a minute. Because we're designed in God's image, we are happiest and most fulfilled when we are serving and giving. It does something to us. Giving blesses us physically. Giving makes positive physical changes in your body. The Huffington Post, not exactly your most Christian news source. The Huffington Post said, practicing generosity is a mental health principle, and it could be the very key to a happy and healthy life. Not only does generosity reduce stress, support one's physical health, enhances one's sense of purpose, and naturally fight depression, it's also shown to increase one's lifespan. The Huffington Post, a secular news organization. Chicago Tribune says the benefits of giving are significant. According to those studies, it lowers blood pressure, lower risk of dementia, less anxiety and depression, reduced cardiovascular risk, and overall greater happiness. It pays to be a giver. Medical Ministry, Ellen White says, the pleasure of doing good animates the mind and vibrates through the whole body. And I like this one from 4 Testimonies of the Church, page 56. The pleasure of doing good to others imparts a glow to the feelings which flashes through the nerves. It quickens the circulation of the blood and induces mental and physical health. That is so awesome, isn't it? Doing good and giving. Amazing. We want to manage God's temple. You know, 85% of millionaires actually work out 3 times a week, and 70% are fitness nuts, working out 5 to 6 times a week. They're taking care of their bodies. We are God's millionaires. We have this treasure in earthly vessels, so we want to take care of our bodies. And what joy we have. Giving is a reminder of God's ownership. It's praise and worship. It's spiritual warfare. And we want to remember, when it comes to tithes and offerings, the tithe is of our increase. The offerings are the first fruits. The tithe is the first fruits off the top. The tithe goes to the church that provides the same function as the Old Testament storehouse. It's to pay for the ministry of the gospel. Offerings are different than tithe. Tithe is God's. Offerings are my free giving from my surplus after God's tithe. Okay? I know I'm zipping along pretty fast. Puff, puff, pant, pant. Yeah. So here's our challenge. Read your Bible daily. Pray for continual wisdom of Solomon when it comes to how to manage our things. Get your estate plan in order. See you tomorrow. Create and follow your budget. My associate, who really likes to do financial management, suggests reading a book a month on finance. There's several from the Biblical Foundation, at least that are biblically based. Find and start a financial accountability group. I've got a new resource I'm thinking about starting to use alongside of or instead of the Dave Ramsey material that actually uses a small group approach to working on your personal finances and your budget. And then give because you want to, not because you're going to get an income tax deduction, not for some kind of earthly benefit. And remember as we close, Pastor, God's most valuable gift is free. God's grace, ministered through the life, death, resurrection, high priestly ministry of Jesus Christ, is free. Hey, we had fun this afternoon. You had a lot of questions, a lot of advice, a lot of counsel, a lot of suggestions back and forth. I hope this has been a blessing to you. Thanks for having my wife and I come and be with you today. It's a pleasure to get to know Pillars of Faith better. Anything else before we close?
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
You didn't mention about having security in case something happened, you know, like put money aside for emergency, you know, like Dan Ramsey says. And if you don't, okay, you know how your washer and dryer break down, and Home Depot would say no interest free for a year, which I did. But is that what's good or not?
Well, let's go back to a couple things. I zipped right past that. It's in the budget, having an emergency savings, and they recommend 3 to 6 months. They're now bumping that up to 6 to 12. I'm doing good to get 3 to 6 months. I'm just going to be straight up with you on that. My personal view, if you don't want to take it out of your emergency fund and your washer and washer breaks down and Home Depot says 6 months, no interest. Sit down and do the math. Can you make those payments in 1 year? Or, I mean, if they may say 1 year, no interest. Can you make those payments in 1 year? Okay? Dave Ramsey doesn't like those because he says they suck you in. And if you don't get it paid off, lots of times they defer the interest, so they add it on to the back. Okay? But if you've got the discipline and you can pay it off in a year, you're using somebody else's money. But if you don't know whether you've got the discipline, or if your past record says, I get to kind of liking that, and then I feel like I can stretch these out, and you know. Here's something else that not everybody would say. You don't have to buy new. There's a lot of places you can buy appliances that still have some years left in them for pennies on the dollar. You know, just a thought. The thing I like about new when I can is I take really good care of it. And I know what I got, and then I make it go 10 or 15 years. I think our Maytag finally, was it a Maytag, Jeannie? Our Maytag finally died in the last year. And yeah, we went to Home Depot and we paid cash. But, you know, we're going to take care of it and we're going to make it last. And so that's why I didn't go get a, you know, pre-owned appliance. But we've bought pre-owned appliances before for that very reason. So, yes, sir.
Just a quick question. Going back to the charitable gift annuity, is there a minimum to start something like that?
Yes. For the Georgia Cumberland Conference, our minimum is $10,000. Okay, and we recommend that you be at least 65 years of age, or you need to have it deferred until you're 65.
Okay.
So you've got to be in that age range. There's pros and cons to charitable gift annuities, and if anybody's interested, I'll be glad to talk to you about them. The biggest con, the biggest negative to a charitable gift annuity is once you've bought it, and it's a fixed rate for life. And some people will say, yeah, but that doesn't factor in. Inflation's going to rise and you're still getting the same dollar amount. And I'm like, yeah, you're still getting the same dollar amount. But for people who don't want the risk of being in the stock market and having things go up and down, I'm getting the same payment for life. I know what I'm going to get. The second advantage is, and I know that something's going to go to God's work at the end. So you weigh that out and say, what's right for me? Most financial advisors nowadays are saying it's good to have, as part of a mix, it's good to have an annuity in there somewhere. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay, right. Anybody else? I think, Pastor, these folks have been really good. They've been very patient and very active and very engaged. I see a hand in the back. I was going to let everybody go, but I think we're going to stay. I'll stay here as long as you guys want. Jeannie may leave me and you're going to have to put me up for the night, but I'll stay.
Yes, I've listened to 750 WSB with Clark Howard.
Yes, Clark Howard's a great guy.
Yeah, he spoke a lot about instead of buying a new car, let somebody take the shine off.
That's what we do.
And you get a great discount. Still get a new car, not an old car, but you know, as long as you didn't buy it first, you could save a great deal of money.
The car that you see in the parking lot out here, we bought 3 years old. It'd come off of a lease, and it's now got, we bought it in 2016, it's now got 190,000 miles on it.
Praise God.
And we got it with about 22,000 miles. So we thank the Lord, but our attitude is buy reasonably pre-owned and drive the wheels off of it.
Amen.
And the truck we just got, and we sold my wife's car, the truck we just got was a salvage truck. It had been totaled out in an accident. And that was a new experience for us. We've never done that before. But it was quite a bit cheaper than buying a new or a used truck. It just took us months to get it out of the body shop. I said to Jeannie, they say time is money. And we didn't have money, but we had time. So we bought a truck and it got in the body shop for months. So save money. Yes. Anything else?
I just like that statement that you just made. I used it a few years ago. I was going up to New York City, and my brother said, "Why don't you just fly up? Pay, book a ticket." Yeah. I said, "Man, you either have more money than time or more time than money.
Mm-hmm.
Since I have more time than money, I'm going to drive up."
That's right. That's right. Right? That's been us several times, brother. Been us several times. And we've driven places too, rather than fly. Yes, ma'am. We've got a hand up back here.
I had a conversation with a young person several weeks ago.
Okay.
And I didn't know how to advise her on this, but she was saying that she does not want to be a homeowner because she doesn't want to have the stress of dealing with stuff that homeowners deal with. She doesn't want to have to deal with the repairs.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to have to do the yard work and pay to get the yard work done and all of that. So she believes she's going to be a renter until whatever. Now, I have heard it said, when I listen to some of these programs about financial, whatever,
right,
that one of the best ways to create wealth is through home ownership. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why there is such a large wealth gap between blacks and whites or other minorities, is because there is less opportunity for minorities to own homes. So what is your take on that? Should we aspire to have our own homes? Are there really benefits? Can we really create wealth from that? Or should we, like this young lady was saying, she doesn't want to, is it okay can you still create wealth in other ways? What about insurance? I know that our church, and I know this is a lot in one question, but there are some in our church who look askance at insurance and investing in the stock market and things like that. And I'm like,
okay, so let's break all this down, because there's several really good points in this, and so let's just break it down. And let's also say this is not going to be the definitive answer. It's not going to be the answer everybody else might say. This is just one answer to all of these things. Okay, certain financial advisors right now are divided on whether to own a home or not, renting versus owning. Okay, and so part of your young friend's thing is not so much the financial side, it's the personal preference side. So it's okay to recognize a personal preference. The personal preference is, I have friends that are good money managers, they don't want to own. Or if they do own, they own a condo. I don't want a condo. I'm either going to rent or I'm going to own a home, but I don't want to own a condo. I mean, there's all kinds of little built-in things to everything. So what financial advisors are saying, well, if you're buying a home, you've got the payment, you've got insurance, you've got interest, you've got HOA fees, you've got repairs, and it just may not be, when you get to the end of 20 years, you may not be that much money ahead. Okay? There are others that say, but if you own a home, you're not throwing rent away. You've actually got an asset that's sitting there. And so at least your money is parked here.
And is that the equity?
That's the equity side of it. That's your equity. The other part is saying, and this is the one thing the government does give you some financial advantage to, because if you're a homeowner, you can deduct the interest of the home off of your taxes, depending on whether you've hit the minimum, the $12,000 or $24,000 for married couples standard deduction. That's a whole other story, okay? So those are the decisions you have to factor in. Traditionally, home ownership has had some advantages if, and here's the big if you follow certain basic common sense things about a home and where that home was located. The realtors and Dave Ramsey, realtors said this for years before Dave ever said it, that one of the first things about purchasing a home is location, and the second thing is location, and the third thing is location. Location, location, location. Where you buy the home determines what the value of the home is likely to go and be at. So you need to buy well. When I say buy well, buy what you can afford in the best place that will help that home's value stay. You need to look at the neighborhood. If you're buying a home that's surrounded on 3 sides by mobile homes, it ain't gonna go. Okay? If you're buying a home in a neighborhood where everybody else's house is run down and they don't take care of it and they got cars up on blocks in the yard, you're not going to get your value out of it. I'm not running anybody down. I'm just saying that's the market, the way it works. It's just the way the market works. You don't want to buy the biggest house in the neighborhood. I could go down a whole litany of things, you know, and a good realtor will talk that over with you if you're, you know, have a good relationship with a realtor. How long are you going to be in the house? It used to be years ago you could be in a house 3 to 5 years and you'd come out making a profit every time you turned it. And then there were several years where you're going to lose money in 3 to 5 years. There was a time a few years ago when in Atlanta you could buy a reasonable house in a good neighborhood, and then when you went to sell, you're underwater. You actually owed more than the house would sell for. Okay? So we have to realize that while traditionally homes have been good for Americans, you cannot guarantee that when you need to sell, where the market will be. It is an investment. If you plan to be in it for 20 years and you bought in a good neighborhood, you're probably going to be all right. Okay? So that's the real fast thing on that. Again, it's basically personal preference. Do I want to be responsible for repairs? Do I want to do the yard work? Am I going to pay somebody to do it? I like doing yard work, and so does my wife. And we have dug over 120 holes in this Georgia clay that we Southerners call Georgia clay. I call it red cement, but anyway. We chipped our way in to do our own landscaping. Buy our little shrubs and put them out and stuff and everything, you know. But we like doing that. We mow our own yard. People on 3 sides of us hire somebody to mow the grass, for crying out loud. Where's their budget? I don't get it. It takes me 30 minutes max, you know. So those are the factors that kind of go into that. Okay, there are 2 other things. One was insurance. I do not consider insurance the best way to build wealth. It can be done, and I'm not going to fault anybody that chooses to do it. And somebody here may be an insurance salesman. I've had 2 brother-in-laws that have sold insurance. So, but they also, one of them also gives me some honest scoops now that he's retired on some stuff. I do consider, he's retired, but he told me, Ray, you're of such an age you should self-insure. Don't even buy life insurance now. Okay, I do believe in life insurance. I believe in level term life. Level term, you're just buying protection. You're not going to get any money back when the term is over, unless you die. And you're not going to get it then. Somebody else is going to get it. So while the kids were in college and we had a mortgage on a house that was larger than it is now, I got 20-year level term. And that 20-year period ran out 2 years ago, and at my age, guess what the premiums were going to go? I just didn't renew, and I haven't bought any other. Okay, I was buying protection for when we needed it the most. Okay, and now I have some life insurance through my employer, and I bought a little extra through them at a group rate. So I didn't go out on the market and buy more. But I do believe when you've got kids, you should have life insurance. I recommend term life insurance. And there's different term products. You could be term that moves up every year, level 5, and then steps up, level 10. I went for 20. That means the whole 20 years, I knew what my payment was going to be every year. Okay? All I was buying was protection for my family. I wasn't whole life, universal life, multi-life, whatever the other things are that you're going to get. Now, if you were, I'm not saying you should or people would agree with it, but if you were, there was an insurance company that used to say, buy term, invest the difference. Okay, now they sold insurance. Did you work for them? Okay, I just want to be careful now where my friends are. They would say, buy term, invest the difference. Okay, that philosophy was correct. Their investment product was horrible. Their insurance was okay, but their investment product was not that good compared to other investment products. I'm sorry, if you had what? Well, yes, but the way they did it was, and we'll talk about the discipline in a second, the way they did it was they said, buy term, invest the difference, but put the whole amount with us. We'll sell you the term and we'll invest the money for you. So we're not selling you a universal life product, we're selling you term insurance and we're also selling you an investment separate. They put the two in the same office, but it was an investment broker and an insurance broker at the same. I can name the company, but I'm not going to. Yeah, you know. Okay. So, I think that's what they're called now. So, let me talk about insurance for just a minute, too. A lot of members, I'm sorry, not a lot, some members say, well, Ellen White says you shouldn't buy insurance, so don't get insurance. That's not quite the case, and the Ellen White estate has some stuff. You can get it on the GC website about what she actually says about insurance and what the principles are, okay? So the idea, first of all, of having basic coverage to provide for your family if something happens to you is very sound. It fits within Ellen White's principles, okay? In the day that she was writing that, there were a couple factors that were taking place. One is there were several numerous inscrutable insurance companies that they weren't sound. Number two, they were encouraging people to take out policies on anybody and everybody, these companies were, as speculation. So you could go down and you could take out this literally happened all the time. You could take out a policy on the town drunk and you literally, I'm being honest here, I'm not just being sarcastic, town drunk, and in a year or two you knew you were going to collect. And the company knew you were going to collect too. Okay? That's the kind of insurance atmosphere that Ellen White says we don't want to speculate with insurance. That's different than protecting your family. Okay? She was not down on that. So that's the different principle that's involved. Okay, investing in the stock market. Woo! A prudent person will invest in something. Every investment has risk. You need to decide how much risk and where you're willing to invest. Let's go with Christ's parable of the talents. To one, the master gave 5. To another, the master gave 2. And to the third, the master gave 1. And when the master came back, the guy with 5 says, see, I've gone and used these talents, I've invested them. Really, I've earned 5 more. The one who gave 2 says, I've gone and invested these, and I've earned 2 more. So I've got 10 and 4. And the third guy said, I know you're worried about your money, and you don't want to lose money, so I took the talent and buried it in the ground so it would be safe. And now here's your talent back. I'm giving you back what you gave me. I protected it. I didn't lose any money. I didn't lose any money. And what did the master say? Yeah, you wicked and lazy servant. You could have at least put it with the bankers. Now, what Christ was really teaching was not investment philosophy. What was Christ really teaching? Christ was teaching us, you and me in the church, to invest in mission for the lost. And then we're get out and work for the lost and use our abilities and use what God has given us to take risks to reach people that haven't been reached yet. Okay? That's the real teaching. Sideways, I'll make up my own teaching and say, and by the way, putting money in the ground was not a good investment. So, there are people that are concerned about investing in stocks because they say it will be gambling. Okay? There is gambling in people who do certain kinds of transactions. There are day traders. There are people who figure out, is the stock going to go up? I place an amount of money based on whether the stock is going to go up or whether it's going to go down, short sale, all this kind of stuff. There's all these kinds of things. The basic principle behind the solid stock is you own a piece of the company. It's a very, okay? And really, it's everybody and their neighbor agreeing that there's some value in this. When everybody stops agreeing there's some value in it, there's no value in it. Okay? But it's one of the ways people invest, and there are ways that you can invest soundly and sensibly and prudently, and you can earn. It's also at risk. There's no such thing that I know of yet where you earn a high amount of money with no risk, or even a moderate amount of money with no risk. When you earn, you've always had to take some risk to earn something when it comes to investing. The higher the interest rate or payment rate, the greater the risk. Okay? Now, there are funds out there, both mutual funds, pretty much mutual funds, that are invested very prudently, and they have less risk and less volatility. And I'm not here to, there's certain places I've invested a little bit that we've tried to save outside of our own retirement fund. I'm not here to tell you to do that or not do that or why this fund is better than that. There's as many opinions as there are people in the room as to, where to put it or where not to put it. But before the Lord comes, at some point, it's all going to be gone. I don't care whether you put it in the ground or in the stock market, it's all going to be gone. You will not be able to buy or sell. But until the Lord comes, you need to find a way to occupy till He comes. Okay? So I'm not here to tell you where your safety and comfort zone ought to be. But there are sound places you can invest in the stock market, but I wouldn't advise just going willy-nilly and throwing darts at the board to decide what to invest, and I wouldn't recommend going and finding who's had the highest amount of returns over the last 2 years, because right now the market's been a little overvalued, and it's kind of correcting itself. Otherwise known as my retirement accounts lost 20% in the last few months. But hey, it got almost 40% over the last 2 years. It's going to go up, it's going to go down. That's just what it does. I just don't know when. I don't know if that was helpful or not, but it was straight off the shoulder. Yeah. If you have kids, I really recommend some kind of term life insurance. I will come back to that one. Okay. And if you have a mortgage on a house, I recommend some kind of term life insurance. You don't have to buy mortgage insurance. You just ought to have some kind of insurance to pay off that mortgage if something happens to you. Yeah. And if you have a car, have car insurance.
I know you're at the end, and yes, this won't take very long, but the principles that you've outlined here today, I know we can also apply them to single people.
Oh, yes.
Right? Yes.
Oh, yes.
But, when married folks just seem to have more advantages, because there are two people, basically, coming home with two paychecks if both are working. And it just seems like the market is just geared towards married folks. There just seems to be more benefits out there for them. So I wish there was a program, something like this, where we could speak to single people who only have one paycheck coming in. And yes, I know, like you just said, that the principles are still the same, but are there any additional things that you can say to single people, that would help us along the way?
There are a couple things. Go ahead.
I want to say to you, Jackie, one of the biggest things that I think single people, especially single people without children, overlook is honestly to start a home-based business, because that'll give you a lot of tax deductions that you don't have otherwise access to.
Yeah. So without trying to say anything super profound or those kind of dynamics, there's a couple things right off the bat for single people. One is, if you're a single person, live simply. Okay, don't feel like you have to have the same size house, the same size apartment, the same size condo that you might if you were married or had a family. Live simply. Number two, save. Everybody ought to be saving, single or married. And believe it or not, it can be easier as a single person to save than as a married person. It can be. Just a thought. As Dave Ramsey is saying, every family there's a saver and a spender. So when you're single is one of the best times to save. If you've got student loans, it's one of the best times to get student loans paid off. Okay? Those types of things move you in the direction of becoming more financially solvent and financially independent. Max out anything. If your employer has any kind of retirement match, max it out and maybe even add to it. If you've got a 401k or a 403b at work or Roth IRA or whatever, Social Security is not going to be enough for anybody. And the reason I'm saying this for a single person, I'm going to start off saying if you're 24 and you're just out of college, you start now doing that. Because if you could put, I'm trying to remember what the numbers were, if it was $20,000 a year. If you did $20,000 a year for 10 years in the standard investment account, you could stop in 10 years and never put another dollar in. And you'd have more money when you retired than the person who started at 30 and put double what you did. And because time was on your, so I know this applies to everybody, but especially single people, start maxing out, getting stuff in savings and investment and retirement as soon as you can, as much as you can, and time, the power of time, you know. Thank you so much. So, all right, blessings, everybody. Pastor, bless us. Good to be with you. Bless us with a word of prayer, and let's go.
Okay, let us bow our heads. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the Hartwells. Thank you for their spirit of service in the church for over 44 years.
Yes.
Thank you for renewing their energies as they labor in the vineyard. We thank you, Lord, that this evening was beneficial for all of us in the various categories. We pray that you will bless us, and we ask of you to be so near us that we will always trust your guiding words. Help us not to lean on our own understandings, but to trust your guiding principles. Thank you for answering, we pray, in Jesus' name. Amen.
By the way, I hope you really appreciate your pastor. I've known him for several years. We've worked together on a couple of, I had him on my advisory group to work with me on stewardship. And I really value Pastor Leroy. I hope you guys do too. If you don't, I know a lot of churches that would like him. Just a thought. Glad you're here. Glad you're here. Happy you would come.